Welcome to Refuel with Jennifer Ballou. Join Jennifer for a time to recharge, refresh, and refuel your heart and soul. Here's your host, Jennifer Ballou.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you here with me. I am very happy to be back on the air. I'm even more happy to have a plan. That is just my personality. I like to have a plan. I like to have, kind of things mapped out and know where I'm headed. So, and I don't know that I've ever felt that way with Refuel. It's always just kind of been this crazy thing, and I'll get into that here in just a minute. But I just wanted to thank y'all for the grace of taking the break and this past year of just trying to figure out everything, and the podcast, the radio show, even doing the YouTube stuff. And I will, try to let y'all know where we're headed and how it's going. So anyway, all that to say, I'm just going to take y'all on my journey through this past season and even this past month, what that was really all about. And I just felt like God was really leading me to share that. And maybe it'll help some of you. Maybe if you've been in this kind of weird growth limbo season. I don't know what else to call it. That's just what it feels like. And it's really been since September of 2019 that this season kind of started for me. And I've shared on the air that was a season my oldest daughter got hit in the face with a softball that just broke her eye socket, and just a whole bunch of other stuff that was just awful. Anyway, so starting way back then, there's just been this journey of that I knew God was taking me in this new place, that it was this climb up the mountain, and it was one of those round about the mountain kind of climbs. I could see the growth. I could feel the changes within myself, and I could recognize them. I really understood what being self-aware meant, and how to grow from that, to use that as a growth tool. I really started recognizing, my other areas I needed to grow in. I don't know. It's just been it's been a very growing season since then. So, 2 full years that has been happening, and I could, it was, how do I explain this? At times it would be exhausting because, if you're going on a trek up a mountain, it can be that way. If you think of that physically, it can be exhausting, but for the most part, it was, even when you got exhausted, it was kind of like, okay, we'll keep going. We're getting there, until this summer. And it was just like, I can't go anymore. Like, I've got to sit down. The air is too thin. The fog is too thick. I can't see. I can't hear. That's what it felt like. I was just in this funky fog kind of a thing, and didn't really know quite what to do with it. And in that process, when you're in the middle of walking that out, you stop and you look out from the mountain, and you can tell that you're reaching these new heights, and you have a new vantage point, you have a new perspective on things. But we don't really stop for very long because we have to keep going. We have to keep moving up that mountain. And then when I came to this place where the air seemed thin and, the fog was too thick to see through. And it was just this place of sit down and wait for the fog to clear, wait for, your body to adjust to this new height, this new perspective, this kind of transition into a different season. And I know I've used that word a lot over the last 2 years, and probably the word of transition a lot in the last few months, because I recognized it coming. But, I didn't, how long are you in a transition? So, anyway, so as I'm learning to sit and rest and wait for all those adjustments and for the fog to clear, in that process, God said, let's go back to the beginning. Well, let me tell you something. I ain't walking all the way down that mountain. When he says go back to the beginning, I hope it was more of a mental place. Oh, goodness. Anyway, I'll do whatever God asks. But, that one took me a little bit to go, well, what's the beginning? Because I don't really want to walk down this mountain. But to sit there and wait for the fog to clear, wait for all the, even all the good stuff to catch up. It was just like, there's been so much growth, so much good, so much hard, so much where you can see God's hand in it, just all those different things. It took a minute to sit down and to daily kind of look at all the things that have happened in the last 2 years, and for all of it to catch up together. And for God to go, okay, let's look at the beginning. And whether that was going back to 2019 or, just looking at the last 2 years or looking back. I mean, this was something he did with me for every area of my life. So for Refuel, it was, let's look at the beginning. Let's go back to 2017 when Refuel started. For the studio, it was, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to 2006 when that seed was planted in your heart. For other things, it's just been within the last year or so. And let's look at the heart of it. Let's go back to that beginning, back to the heart, back to the basics, and kind of reestablish the things that God called me to. Because one of the things I do know about myself, and if you've listened to the show for very long, I love personality tests and all that kind of stuff. And there's one called Life Languages that is really cool. And when I do that test, I am like 97. Most people are kind of a 60-40, 70-30, something like that of two different things. I was 97% a doer. I don't even remember what the other thing was because, 3%, like what? That doesn't even matter. But 97%, my personality, I'm a doer. That is a good thing. But there is also a big downfall, and that is I will put my hand to things. When God has called me to things, I'm ready to do it. I'm ready to go. Like, let's make it happen. And I put 100 and whatever % into it. Dive in head first, just go for it. But in that process, there's a lot of times I will put my hand to it, and not really stop long enough to hear, was this really what you wanted, God? Is this what this is supposed to look like? I'm going to learn to not do that, but my personality is first and foremost to do. And so when God had me step back and really look at all the different areas of my life, he was really highlighting places where I had put my hand to things. And yes, I could have heard God on some of it, but still pushed it in a different direction than what God wanted, or I don't know. And sometimes it was maybe like, no, you heard me, you were supposed to do that, but not keep going. I don't really know how to explain it any better than that. But with Refuel in particular, I had really put my hand to some things, because when I jumped into Refuel, I just said yes to God. And there wasn't this really clear end goal. Does that, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if you've ever done that. I would love to hear if any of you have ever just said yes to God and been like, what are we doing? What is this? And so, there was a lot of times where I would try to make it into something different or more, or, trying to figure out, why am I doing this? And, that's just, that's part of the story of Refuel, I guess, is me trying to figure this out. And I still don't know, really. I just, I'm going to be real honest with y'all. I don't know if I may only have 5 people that listen. And to me, that's kind of a weird thing. Radio is weird. Podcast stuff is weird, but it gives you a little bit more on numbers. And in all this process, even looking at studio stuff and, just all the areas of my life, which, home, personal, studio, Refuel, my job at the boutique, just all these different things. One thing that really God has reiterated again and again was, don't take a census. And, when I opened the studio, that was something that God really highlighted to me, was don't take a census. Don't count the numbers. Let me do what I want to do with that. It doesn't matter if you're teaching one, if only one person is listening, just if you only have one friend, if you only have, one person that you are reaching, then that's fine. You let me take care of the numbers. So, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to worry about that with Refuel. I'm just going to share what he has me share, and it may just be for myself. I don't know. But I'm not going to worry about it. And, we're just going to move forward and do what he's called me to do without much of a plan. Oh, that's so hard to say. And I do have a plan, but you know what I hope y'all understand what I mean, what I'm trying to say. And I just snorted on air. That's great. But it's a difficult thing to let go of, knowing, are these people listening? What is the purpose of this? And I know there is a purpose, but it's still one of those very obscure things. So I know I rabbit trailed. But that's really what God had me do. He sat me down and he said, let's go back to the beginning. And so when I was really focusing on this area of my life, I literally pulled out all my notes from from the last 4 years of all the shows. And I started going through them, and I went back to that very first show where we talked about rest. And I realized that in this last part of this crazy season, I had learned to rest, but there was also a different kind of rest that I wasn't tapping into, and I really needed to. And so I was getting very anxious about recording the show and just different things like that. And so looking at that and seeing the rest thing, that's why I just, I really heard God say, okay, you're going to put it down for a month. Let's regroup. And so, I did that, and God graciously has just very slowly showed me different things, throughout the last 4 weeks, and really, had me keep going through a lot of my notes, and kind of like there was some areas where I didn't finish talking, and I personally was learning some things and then jumped into something else, because again, that's part of my personality as well. And that he really wanted to pull back on some of those things, and like, let's revisit those and re-look at that. And, I want to show you some more things in that. So, that's kind of where we are going to head with the show. And, I know that's very vague, but it is what it is. But in the process of really going back and going for the heart of what things were, and finding that even deeper place of rest with him, it's just been really cool to say, like, I didn't put a timeline on it, as far as a month or whatever. It was just kind of like God finally said, okay, here's what I want you to do. So I really thought, okay, I'm going to do all the recording again. I put Patreon away, so that's no longer something that I'm, working on, because I was really striving with that, and I had really put my hand to that. So, I gave that up. But as far as recording goes, I sat down last week on my recording day and put the camera up and recorded a YouTube podcast, and I was just going to put together some things with that for the radio. And I got through, and I just didn't feel great about it. And I kind of put it aside and realized, again, I was putting my hand to things because, it was the show's birthday, and I thought, oh, that'd be really cool. Let's get it back up and going on its birthday week, and so again, putting my hand to things there, I stepped back and realized that's what I was doing. And God, why doesn't this feel right? Where am I really supposed to go? And he was like, when you look at a kid and you're like, oh my gosh, how many different ways can I say this? Go back to the beginning. Well, guess what? The beginning was the radio. The beginning was me just recording my voice and talking. So here we are, back at the beginning. Okay, jumping back into all of this. So back at the beginning was, me, but it was also me going in and doing this live. And I don't feel like that is what God wants me to do. Just how much my life has changed in the last 4 years. And Sundays are kind of a very special, sacred day of, if my family is in, the grandbaby is here, and, just different things like that. So I will be recording, not live, but anyway, but still, this is back to the beginning. This is how, I guess God got my attention finally and said, hello, radio. Like, it does matter. I don't know who's listening, and it doesn't matter who's listening. It's going out on the airwaves, and there's much more to that. We've talked about that. We can only see 3% of what is actually going on. Well, hearing is the same thing. So, putting God's word out there on the airwaves, is just as big of a deal as, if no one is listening, as if 30 million people are listening. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what is going on out there. So I'm going to record. We're going to put it on the air. I am going to have it on podcast. So this first, for you people that listen through podcast, this first one will be longer than the rest of them. But there is kind of a weird thing to figure out between an hour-long show on the radio and then, 20 to 30 minute show on podcast. Anyway, not that you care about all that, but that's for me to figure out. And some of the reason that I really got bogged down and, put my hand to it and all that kind of stuff. So whatever. We're still going to do the scripture challenges that will be posted on Facebook and Instagram. I'll get back more into the whole social media thing. I just kind of set that down because trying to do social media for, 5 different pages is a lot. And I actually don't get on there and look at anything. I do my posts and I put it away. That's how aggravating social media can be. But it's also a good tool. So you got to find the balance in there somewhere. And I think that's kind of what this season, the transition of everything was finding the balance. Like, how do I go forward with the, the momentum that I normally have with things and not put my hand to things and, not need to be so structured and planned and seeing numbers and all those different types of things. How do I just fluidly move forward and rest in it? And anyway, there's still lots to learn. Lots and lots to learn for me. Not to mention that, for many of you, this past year and a half or whatever, but for me, 2 years. Isn't that right? Yes. I'm not great at math, so I don't know why numbers matter to me, because anyway. But for the last 2 years, with the things, the atmosphere of the world, it does affect me a lot. The chaos of things, the just the 9 million voices that are screaming at you from every side, opinion, and view. That drains me, and so it's something that I've had to learn to look at and recognize and wade my way through. It still feels like you're swimming through mud, but in this time of sitting and really processing everything and thinking about that term of back to basics or back to the beginning, getting back to the heart of things. In the midst of all the yuck that the world looks like, I started really looking for God's hand in things, looking for those really good things. And as I was digging through my notes, and there was a study we did that I was doing and kind of walked y'all through what I was learning by Annie Downs, called Looking for Lovely. That just really jumped out at me again. Like, Jennifer, stop every day and look for the lovely. And I have a story that I wish I could really tell. It's not my story to tell, and I haven't been able to sit and talk to the person to really get the whole story to where I could share it with you. But I'm just going to give you what I got from it. There were some pictures of a friend of mine and his daughter and his son. And there is a whole huge God story behind that. But in those pictures, the look on his face looking at his daughter was just such a reminder to me of how my Father looks at me. And my physical dad looks at me that way. My daddy is incredible and awesome. But to remember how the Father looks at me in this process of going, God, I can't move anymore. I'm tired. I can't see. I can't hear. I don't know how to move forward. That he still looks at me with such love and such tenderness and such awe, even. You know when you take that newborn baby and it's just this magical moment, and that I am not a newborn anymore. I am, road weary and, have traveled hard and worked hard and all those things. And my heavenly daddy still picks me up and looks at me like this newborn creature that is perfect. Really, because of the blood of Jesus, that's what God sees. And it was that was one of those looking for lovely moments where it was like, man, that is how you look at all of your children. That's just one of those sit and pause and ponder kind of moments that really took me back to where I was like, oh, okay, God, like I need to every day remember I don't have to do anything to please you. You are already pleased. Even in, doing the radio thing, I could say, I'm just done. I don't want to do it anymore. And he would not be disappointed in me. I don't feel like that's what he's saying. So, we're going to keep going, and I'm going to, every week muster up whatever I need to muster up to do it. And that goes, with the studio. I'm just going to be very honest with y'all. This past year, I was kind of like, I don't know, God, do I still do this? what are we doing here? Because again, it was this 2-year run up the mountain when I got high enough that, the altitude sickness and thin air and fog kind of knocked me down. And I'm sorry, lost for words. I knew the view was there and I couldn't see it. And I had to sit and wait long enough for the clouds, the fog to dissipate, the clouds to move to where I could really use that vantage point to where I had gotten to look down at everything and even to see the next mountaintop, which really does mean I'm starting at the beginning, but I'm not going to focus on that. But to really see that and to see everything, to see from that vantage point of, oh God, your hand is in all of it. It doesn't require me any more of me than a yes and let's go. And he does the rest. And there is beautiful, wonderful, lovely things the whole time. And that whole time, he is looking at me with that father's love of saying, you're amazing. You got this. Let's go. Let's go on this adventure. Let's do this together. And it's breathed new life into everything I'm doing. I'm not doing anything different. It's all the same stuff, but there is new life breathed into it because of that new perspective, that new vantage point. I don't know what the next mountaintop's going to look like. I don't know what that next journey is going to look like. I don't know how long this next season will be, or how hard the climb will be. It's a different climb, but I know that God is taking every step with me, and that, I'm in a place now where I can recognize when I'm putting my hand to things, and hopefully take them off quicker than I have in the past. There's more self-awareness for me to recognize when I'm getting in the way. And it's going to be a beautiful journey. And in taking the steps into this next new season, and another thing that God said, okay, so I've got you back to the beginnings in a lot of places. He kept highlighting, and it was at weird times, and I'll tell you those stories in just a minute, but he kept highlighting those 13 affirmations that my grandfather had us memorize when we were young. And if you've listened for very long, surely you have heard me talk about it. So if you have not been listening very long, you are going to get to learn these with me. But I come from a fairly large family. There was 15 grandkids, and we were all raised very closely. My grandfather had this list of affirmations, and they each had a title to them, and then it was a sentence about that, like about initiative. There was which is the first thing we're going to talk about. So I'll just go ahead and tell you. So under the title initiative, it was, when I see something that needs to be done, I do it. And to get us to memorize these and to really put those in our beings, we could earn money by memorizing those. So I made bank. He he finally told me to stop, because I was actually really good at memorizing things. So, but God took me back to those, and I kept thinking, why do we keep going back to this? But it really is such a part of my DNA. It is such a part of my cousin's DNA. I mean, we can really all sit and talk about these things. It's such a part of who we are. And that was his way of making sure that it was a part of who we are. Because, when you're a kid, nothing talks like money, and earning those, couple of dollars there so you could get a new toy or whatever. But we also saw it modeled with our grandparents and our parents and aunts and uncles, and we learned to model it because, we all knew these things. If somebody walked by something that needed to be done, we could call them out on it, because we could be like, did you not see that needed to be done? Like, what are you doing? So, that's a really part of who I am. But when I started looking at these, God was really like saying, hey, this is really important. We need to relook at this, not just for you, but as a whole, for society and people. This needs to be re-examined in a very scriptural way. I'm sorry, I just got a text, totally distracted me. It doesn't take much, y'all. So that's where we're going to start over the next few weeks, over this month, is really looking at each of these things and diving into those, because it was also, I think, in that going back to the basics thing for me, I needed to remember these for this next season. I needed to remember that these are things that I want to speak out here on Refuel, but these are also things I want to speak out at the studio, that I want to model for the families that are there, for the kids that are there, that this is important stuff. This wasn't just some, childish way of earning money. This was a very key part of all of our lives, and it's served us well. And it's a legacy, and one I want to pass on, and I have a voice in more than just my own children's lives, to pass this on to. And I feel like that's why God was highlighting it, was saying, like, look, you can pass this on. And even at the boutique, that I can model this every day, that this is something that people maybe can recognize in me, or the other employees can see that modeled and step into that same kind of thing. Especially when I see something that needs to be done, I do it. And even this morning, God was talking to me about not taking this at face value, because I'm a doer. So my thought process of when I see something that needs to be done, I do it, is a physical type thing. It's more of a, if a piece of trash needs to be picked up, I'm going to pick it up right then. I don't just walk by it. And it's so much more than that. Okay, so when we talk about initiative, and we're talking about when I see something that needs to be done, I do it. And it doesn't necessarily have to mean, the physical. I'm at a loss for words all of a sudden. I have no idea. Anyway, it's been a long time since I've recorded a full hour-long show, so we're stretching it right now. Anyway, but God was really showing me that didn't necessarily mean like something I could put my hands on. Again, that working mentality, that doer thing. But it could mean, when I see that somebody needs a hug, or, that this world right now needs, it needs some good stuff put into it. It doesn't need my opinion and my views. It needs to know that there is love out there, that there are kind people out there, that there's good still happening, that I need to remember that is also really using initiative and being that voice, and that having that heart of recognizing, where the kingdom needs to penetrate into this world, into this doomsday kind of view. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but the kingdom is not about doomsday. It's just not. We tend to keep focusing on Jesus's return, and I want Jesus, when it does happen, I don't want to be looking for it as in a way of waiting. I want to be living every day expecting Jesus to show up because of the atmosphere that I'm walking in, or this kingdom atmosphere and culture that I have cultivated. Like, not because the end is here and it's all gone to the terms. So I don't want to be looking for Jesus because of that reason. I want to be looking because, man, he just had to get here because it was so good. I was thinking about the song the other day. Oh man, I should have wrote this down. What's the song? When it's about when he walks into the room, or, there's all these things where we have to invite him in, or different songs like that. And I kind of just stopped and I was like, why is that a thing? Like, shouldn't it just be that you are there? Like, when I walk into a room, don't you walk in with me? Isn't that the goal? Like, it was just this sudden mindset change of, it doesn't, I don't know. I should research that a little bit better before I just start blabbing. Because again, y'all don't need opinions. We've got enough of those. But that's the kind of attitude I want to have, is just that really bringing so much of the kingdom and the atmosphere of the kingdom with me, that Jesus is there all the time. I'm not having to wait on him to make an entrance because I wasn't carrying the kingdom with me. And that is even part of the initiative thought process. Like, if we're going to have initiative, let's use that in a way of, when I see something that needs to be done, well, guess what? The kingdom needs to be going into every area. We need to have the initiative to take the kingdom with us at all times. I've said before on here, when we walk into church, it's not up to the worship team to get us in a place of worship, we should be ushering that in to where, along with the worship team in church, we can all go to new heights in our worship. That's initiative. That's where we want to be. That my attitude matters in my day-to-day life, in my day-to-day walk, in my day-to-day dealings with customers, with kids, with my husband, with my children, with, other people in Walmart or at the bank or, wherever you're going, wherever your, sphere is, that your thought process is always taking the kingdom with you, that is the initiative that we need to start taking, that is the initiative that God wants us to pick up, instead of, well, a piece of trash needed to be picked up, so I did it. That was my initiative. I mean, yes, we need to have that. We need to, when we see something physically that needs to be done, we need to be of the character that we do it. We don't walk by it and leave it for somebody else. That we actually have initiative and take care of it. When we know that something, especially in workplaces, that we know that something is going to be difficult, or that we've got this coming up. We finish one project, another one doesn't really start until later. We could just sit around and, whatever until we have to start the next one. No, you use initiative. You go ahead and get started ahead of time, or, no, that may not necessarily be in your job description, but it sure would help somebody out. So we pick that up and we do it. Those are all good characteristics. We need to have that, but we also need to have the characteristic of initiative, that we take the kingdom in with us. I had a friend walk into the boutique the other day, and she was carrying an oxygen tank with her. And I haven't seen her in a very long time. And had no idea that she had COVID or any of that type of thing. But, she had a great attitude, and she was like, yeah, this has been really, really difficult. But I have a testimony from it. And there was just this excitement about it, of, it doesn't matter what it looks like. Jesus was all in this. And I've heard a lot of people that have that same story, that, man, I've got a testimony from this. And a lot of it does. I mean, hers didn't even have to do with healing. It had to do with the slowdown. So that was really cool. And you're probably wondering, why did I jump into this? But that goes back to that initiative thing. She didn't walk in to the boutique doing, like, how do I say it? She was carrying the kingdom with her. She has a story. She has a testimony. She is walking that out, and it went with her. She didn't hide that. It was the first thing out of her mouth. It wasn't the sickness or any of that came out of her mouth first. It was, I've got a testimony. And it's all about rest and being still, and that's the kind of initiative. Yes, we need to have the other, because that speaks of the character of God to me. Like, I think Jesus took initiative, so that was a godly character that we need to have. But in that way of, let's carry our stories with us. Let's live in the goodness of those stories and carry that kingdom perspective into situations, into every area of our lives at all times. Because, I mean, if you turn on the TV for 2 seconds, you know this world needs the kingdom. And it is up to us to bring it. It's not up to anyone else. Like, if we are part of the kingdom, then we have to bring it with us. I hope I'm making sense. For me, it is just like these 13 affirmations that my grandfather so instilled in me and in my cousins, that they do. We carry those into places. It is a part of who we are. And it is how we operate. It is how we view things. It is how we, and this isn't correct, but it is a lot of how we judge things as well. And no, that is not something we need to do, but we all do that. You know what I'm saying? So it is part of our perspective on life. Well, the goodness of God, the goodness of the kingdom needs to be so ingrained in our DNA that it is what we operate from. Just like these affirmations are for me, the kingdom purposes of God need to be so ingrained in my DNA that is where I live from, that is where my perspective comes from, that is how I look at every situation, and that I take that out into the world, that is where I function from. And that's where the church needs to be. That's where we as believers need to be operating from. That is the initiative we need to take, is to have the kingdom so a part of our DNA that we operate in it constantly at every level. You know, I did walk by something the other day and I was aggravated trying to get way more done than I probably needed to do. Guess again, hello, it's me. I was feeling like I didn't have much help and I was having to do more than one job, you know, all those different things. And I walked by something and I thought, I'm not doing that right now. I know it needs to be done, but I'm not doing it. And I couldn't do it like that. When I see something that needs to be done, I do it. Popped up so much in my head that I was like, dadgummit, I can't just walk by this. I've got to take care of it. You know, so I stopped and did it and went on with my day. And I had a reason for that story. What was it? But that's how much the kingdom needs to be in us, that we literally can't, not love people. Like, even when we don't want to, we can't not, because it is so much a part of who we are. And God's been showing me and teaching me and requiring that of me lately. And so I need this perspective on it. Otherwise, doesn't feel so good. And I know that's a weird thing, but it doesn't sometimes to just, I don't know. Anyway, that's my ramblings for today, for getting back on the air. And I hope you will join me next week. We're going to keep going through these affirmations and just really taking some scripture and applying that. We'll probably jump back into initiative before moving on to some others. and all that good stuff. So be sure you're following me on Instagram and Facebook for the scripture challenges. Email me, jennifer@refuel.com, and I will speak. I don't know. What's the right term? I'll be back next week. Love you guys. Bye.